Every city you know began as a simple collection of walls. The evolution of ancient urban planning is the hidden story of how we learned to live together, transforming basic shelters into the foundations of modern civilization. By the end of this journey, you will understand the secret language of streets and stones that shaped our world. Why did the first city planners choose a perfect grid? And what powerful messages were carved into marble monuments meant to last forever? What single innovation from the ancient world do you think still defines your own city today? These first clustered homes were not yet cities, but they held a revolutionary blueprint for the future. At a place known as Çatalhöyük in what is now Turkey, a community thrived for centuries with a layout that feels alien to us today. Houses made of mud brick were built so close together they shared walls, creating a continuous, almost living structure. There were no streets at ground level, no main squares for public gathering. Instead, people moved across the rooftops, using ladders to descend into their individual homes. This was an architecture of profound connection and also of practical defense. The entire settlement faced inward, a fortress of family units where the community itself was the primary defense wall. The planning here was not imposed by a single ruler or a grand design. It was an organic growth, a pattern that emerged naturally from the daily realities of kinship, shared resources, and the ever-present need for security. This was the birthplace of the built environment, the moment we decided to shape our world from mud and reed. What compelled this shift from a life of constant movement to one of rooted permanence? The security and surplus generated by farming changed everything. Cultivating crops and domesticating animals created a stable food supply. This reliability meant families could grow larger and generations could live together in one place. It allowed for the accumulation of possessions, for the development of crafts like pottery and weaving, and for the first subtle layers of social structure to form. Within these windowless walls, decorated with elaborate paintings and the skulls of ancestors, the seeds of civilization were quietly sown. The concept of owning a piece of the earth, of investing in a location that would outlive any single person, had taken root. From this foundational layer of emergent, community-driven design, the human story of urban planning was ready for its next, more deliberate chapter. This organic architecture of rooftops and shared walls could only scale so far. For the next great leap in urban design, humanity needed a force both predictable and powerful, a force that could tame the land itself. That force was a river. In the great valleys of the Mesopotamia, the Indus and the Nile, the annual floods deposited rich, life-giving silt, creating vast agricultural surpluses that could feed thousands. But this bounty came with a terrifying cost, the constant threat of chaotic, destructive flooding. The response to this challenge gave birth to the world's first true cities, and with them, a new philosophy of urban life, one of absolute order imposed upon a volatile world. At places like Mohenjo-Daro and Thebes, we see a complete departure from the inward-facing clusters of the past. These were planned cities, laid out with a geometric precision that still feels modern. Their streets ran in straight, grid-like patterns, a conscious design for managing traffic, people, and goods. They built the first sophisticated drainage systems, with covered channels running beneath the streets, a clear and deliberate consideration for public health that separated clean water from waste. And they reached for the heavens with monumental structures like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, massive stepped pyramids that served as temples and administrative centers. These were not just buildings, they were statements of power, both divine and earthly, aligned with the movements of the sun and stars. The humble mud brick was perfected here, sun-dried into a standardized, durable building block that allowed for these larger, more complex constructions. This was the pivotal shift from communities that grew reactively to societies that built proactively. For the first time, urban planners were not just arranging houses, they were engineering a complete human environment, considering everything from hygiene and commerce to the overwhelming symbolic power of architecture. The legacy of these river valley civilizations is this fundamental principle that to build a city is to assert mastery over the environment, to create a bastion of human order against the chaos of the natural world. But what happens when this drive for order and power reaches its ultimate expression, not in brick but in stone? Wealth built walls. The very riches that allowed cities to flourish also made them targets, transforming urban planning into a matter of survival. The most powerful answer to this threat was the citadel, a fortress within a city that became the new heart of power. Perched on an acropolis or a steep hill, these strongholds dominated the skyline from Mycenae in Greece to the ancient city of Jerusalem. They were far more than just military bases. Within their formidable walls stood the royal palace, the state treasury, and the most important temples, a physical fusion of military, political, and divine authority that everyone below could see every single day. The walls themselves underwent a dramatic evolution. Early fortifications of packed earth and timber were replaced by colossal constructions of stone. At Mycenae, they used massive, irregular boulders so large that later cultures believed only mythical giants, the Cyclopes, could have lifted them. These cyclopean walls were not just barriers, they were the ultimate expression of a city's permanent boundary, a line drawn in stone against the outside world. This overwhelming need for protection dictated the entire form of the city. Inside the outer walls, streets were often cramped and winding, a deliberate maze designed to slow down and confuse any invader who breached the main gates. This created a clear urban split, a duality that would echo for centuries. The fortified upper citadel housed the elite, safe and separate, while the sprawling lower town accommodated the merchants, artisans, and common citizens in a more vulnerable, organically grown space. This was the birth of a new urban morphology, one where the shape of a city was not just a product of community or commerce, but of calculated defense. And it was within these walled strongholds that the next great material revolution in city building would take hold, moving from the brute strength of cyclopean stone to the elegant permanence of marble. That shift from mud to stone was not just a physical transformation, it was a spiritual one. The most profound purpose for a city was to be a sacred map of the cosmos itself. Ancient planners saw their work as an act of creation mirroring the divine order, and this belief gave rise to an invisible architecture of sacred geometry. In Egypt, entire cities were aligned with the cardinal points, their main avenues pointing precisely north, south, east, and west. This was not for convenience, but to anchor the human world to the eternal cycles of the sun and stars. The temple was not just another building, it was the axis mundi, the spiritual pivot of the universe, the point where heaven and earth were believed to touch. From this sacred center, the entire city would radiate outward, its streets and districts arranged to facilitate the great religious processions that were the heartbeat of public life. Think of a city like a mandala, the intricate geometric symbol used in some Indian traditions. The city plan itself was a mandala, a cosmic diagram meant to bring order and harmony to the human realm. Every street, every gate, every neighborhood had its place in this grand design, embedding spiritual practice directly into the daily journey from home to market to field. This was urban planning with a soul, where the location of a wall or the angle of an avenue was calculated not just for defense or traffic, but to maintain a sacred connection. The pyramids of Giza are the ultimate expression of this, their sides aligned with celestial precision, their forms reaching for the heavens. They were not isolated monuments, but the powerful, silent centers of vast ceremonial cities. This deep desire to harmonize with the cosmos pushed architectural innovation to its limits, driving the need for perfect measurements, complex mathematics, and a vision of space that was both practical and profoundly spiritual. The city became a living temple, and every citizen, simply by walking its ordained paths, participated in a perpetual ritual. How then did this sacred vision of order translate into the practical, bustling world of the first true metropolises, where people from every corner of the ancient world came together? The sacred geometry of the cosmos found its human-scale counterpart in the bustling heart of the Greek polis. This new city model, the city-state, introduced a revolutionary duality into urban life, physically splitting the landscape between the realm of the gods and the space of the people. High above, perched on the Acropolis, stood the magnificent temples of marble and limestone, a fortified sanctuary dedicated to divine power and eternal order. Down below, in the flat open area at the city's core, lay the Agora. This was not merely a marketplace, it was the world's first true civic square, the beating heart of a radical new idea called democracy. Here, in the shadow of the sacred high ground, citizens gathered not to worship a king, but to debate, to trade, to philosophize, and to govern themselves. This physical separation created a constant, dynamic conversation between the sacred and the profane, the eternal ideals of the gods and the messy, vibrant reality of human society. The very design of the Agora, with its encircling public buildings, its stoas providing shaded colonnades for conversation, was an architecture of participation. It was a space engineered for chance encounters, for public speeches, for the free exchange of goods and ideas. This was a profound departure from the top-down planning of river valleys or the defensive crouch of citadels. For the first time, a significant portion of the city was designed not for a ruler or for the gods alone, but explicitly for the citizen. While many early Greek cities grew organically into winding labyrinths, a new vision of urban order soon emerged. In the later Hellenistic period, planned cities like Miletus embraced the Hippodamian grid, a rational system of straight streets dividing the city into equal blocks. This was not just about efficiency, it was a philosophical statement about fairness and equal access to the city's resources. The grid plan ensured that every citizen, at least in theory, had a similar stake in the polis. This marriage of democratic spirit and reasoned design marked a pivotal evolution, transforming the city from a place of mere habitation into a machine for cultivating civic life. The legacy of the polis is this enduring idea that a city's greatest monument is not its tallest temple, but its most active public square. But how would this revolutionary model of civic space be adopted, adapted, and ultimately superseded by an empire that sought to organize the entire known world under a single, unifying law? The democratic ideals of the Agora found their ultimate expression in the mind of a single visionary, Hippodamus of Miletus. He is often called the father of urban planning, a title he earned by doing something no one had done before. He treated city building as a science. In the 5th century before the Common Era, this Greek thinker proposed a radical idea that the physical layout of a city could directly shape the character of its citizens and the health of its political life. His most famous tool was the gridiron plan, a system of straight streets crossing at right angles to create neat, rectangular city blocks. This was not merely an aesthetic choice, it was a recipe for efficiency, for better sanitation with organized drainage, and for a new kind of social order. Hippodamus imagined a city divided into three distinct zones, one for sacred purposes, one for public life, and one for private dwellings. In his design for Piraeus, the port of Athens, this theory became a blueprint for urban living, separating the hustle of the harbor from the quiet of the neighborhoods and the solemnity of the temples. His philosophy was profound in its simplicity. A well-ordered city, he argued, would naturally produce a well-ordered and just society. This was the moment urban planning transformed from a reactive process into an intellectual act, a premeditated design for human happiness. While not all of his grand visions were fully realized in his lifetime, his true legacy is the very concept of the master-planned city. He gave the world the powerful idea that we can design our future from the ground up, an ideal that empires would soon seize upon to organize the entire known world. The Romans transformed urban planning into a tool of empire, building cities that were both monumental and methodical. They standardized a blueprint for civilization and stamped it across three continents, from the rainy outposts of Britannia to the deserts of Syria. At the heart of every new city lay two great roads, the Cardo Maximus running north to south and the Decumanus Maximus running east to west. These were not just streets, they were the primary axes of the entire urban universe, the rigid spine upon which the body of the city was built. Where these two main streets crossed, you would find the Forum. This was the Greek agora perfected and amplified, a grand public square surrounded by law courts, shops, and temples. It was the administrative, commercial, and social nucleus of Roman life, a space designed to impress upon every citizen the power and order of the state. But the true genius of Rome was hidden beneath the marble and cobblestones. They understood that a great city was not defined by its buildings, but by its infrastructure. Aqueducts, those breathtaking arcs of stone, channeled fresh water from mountains many miles away, supplying public fountains, bathhouses, and private homes. Below ground, the great cloaca or sewer systems flushed waste into nearby rivers, a massive public health project that kept urban populations healthy on an unprecedented scale. Paved roads, straight and durable, connected these urban hubs into a single, cohesive network, allowing legions to march and goods to flow from one corner of the empire to the other. This was all made possible by a material revolution, the invention of Roman concrete. This incredibly strong and versatile material allowed them to construct soaring domes, massive amphitheaters like the Colosseum, and vast basilicas with a speed and scale never before seen. They faced their buildings with brick and marble, creating a visual language of power and permanence that was instantly recognizable everywhere. The Roman city was a machine for living, a highly efficient, practical, and awe-inspiring environment designed to pacify, integrate, and civilize. It was the ultimate expression of an imperial philosophy that to control the world you must first organize it, one perfectly planned city at a time. The soaring arches of aqueducts and the grand forums of Rome painted a picture of imperial power, but for the vast majority of its citizens, urban life was lived far from the marble monuments. As the city's population exploded, a new, vertical world emerged to house the masses, the Insulae. These multi-story apartment blocks, some reaching 5 or even 7 stories high, were the ancient answer to urban density, creating a city that grew upwards because it could no longer spread out. On the ground floor, you would find the bustling tabernae, small shops and workshops that opened directly onto the street, filling the air with the sounds of commerce and craft. The shopkeeper and his family might live in a small room at the back, while the upper floors were a warren of rented rooms and small apartments, housing everyone from low-level clerks to laborers. This was not merely a building, it was a vertical slice of Roman society, a place where different classes lived in startlingly close proximity, separated only by a creaking wooden staircase. The construction of these early high-rises, made possible by Roman concrete, was often rushed and speculative, leading to frequent and devastating fires and tragic structural collapses. The risks became so great that Emperor Augustus introduced the world's first known building height regulations, limiting new insulae to about 70 Roman feet, a clear attempt to impose order on this chaotic vertical expansion. The insula represents a critical turning point in the story of cities, the moment we consciously chose to build upwards. The daily reality for its residents was one of noise, cramped quarters, and the constant challenge of fetching water and dealing with waste. This ancient model of high-density housing, with all its familiar challenges of safety and sanitation, reveals a profound truth. The very problems and solutions of modern metropolitan life, from overcrowding and fire codes to the social dynamics of apartment living, have roots that stretch back over 2 millennia. The city had become a machine for living, but its most common cog was not a temple or a bathhouse. It was a cramped apartment with a shop below. The material of the city began to speak a new language. While the Roman Republic had built with practical, locally quarried stone like tufa and travertine, the dawn of the empire ushered in a deliberate and dazzling transformation. The first emperor, Augustus, would famously boast that he had found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. This was far more than a simple upgrade in aesthetics. It was a masterclass in political theater, written in stone for all to see. Marble had to be imported at immense cost from quarries in Greece, Turkey, and North Africa, its very procurement a demonstration of Rome's global reach and untouchable wealth. A simple brick wall spoke of function and privacy, but a polished marble facade, gleaming in the sun, shouted of power, stability, and an empire meant to last for eternity. This was architecture as pure propaganda, a visual language designed to command obedience and inspire awe in every citizen who walked past. The Forum of Augustus, for instance, was not just a new public square, it was a carefully orchestrated stage set. Its Temple of Mars altar was sheathed in brilliant white Carrara marble, a stark, majestic backdrop for imperial ceremonies. Nearby, the Aura Passus, or Altar of Peace, stood as a monument to the peace Augustus had brought, its walls carved from the same luminous stone and covered in intricate reliefs depicting the imperial family in a sacred procession. Every polished surface, every fluted column, was a silent argument for the legitimacy and divine favor of the new regime. The city itself became a symbol, its very substance communicating a message of unshakable order and eternal glory. This calculated use of urban design to shape public perception marks a pivotal moment in history, the moment a city's skyline became a direct extension of the state's voice. What happens then when that powerful, unifying voice begins to fracture, and the great marble monuments must face a new world of uncertainty and change? That same grid plan, so efficient for Roman legions, became a blueprint for domination far beyond the empire's fall. When European powers set out to colonize the Americas, they carried this Roman model with them as a tool of control. In places like Mexico City and Lima, Spanish planners imposed a rigid chessboard of streets directly atop the ruins of conquered indigenous capitals. This was a deliberate act, a way to physically erase the old, organic layout and stamp a new, foreign order onto the land. The central plaza, with its church and government buildings, replaced the native temple complex as the unchallenged heart of the city. Every straight street leading from it was a line of sight for both commerce and cannon fire. This system made the new territory instantly legible to its distant rulers. A governor arriving from Spain could immediately understand the city's structure, locate its key institutions, and monitor its population. The land was divided into uniform plots, easily granted to conquistadors and settlers, rewarding loyalty while displacing local communities. This geometric order was presented as civilization, but its primary function was administration and surveillance. It suppressed centuries-old patterns of life that had grown from the local landscape and culture, replacing them with an impersonal, rationalist model designed for extraction and command. The grid in this context was never neutral. It was the physical manifestation of a new reality, a silent, stone and dust argument for a power that intended to stay. This enduring legacy reveals a profound truth about urban design, that the simplest pattern of lines on a map can be one of history's most powerful instruments of change. Yet the stone language of empire is not permanent. When the administrative heart of Rome ceased to beat, the meticulous order it imposed on its cities began to unravel across Europe. The great aqueducts, those marvels of engineering, fell silent, their channels cracking and filling with debris. The grand forums, once bustling with senators and citizens, were gradually abandoned, their marble paving stones stripped for reuse or buried under centuries of soil. The population of urban centers shrank dramatically, and those who remained often retreated behind a single, stout section of the old Roman walls, leaving vast swaths of the former city to return to field and pasture. The very concept of the city as a planned, integrated machine for living seemed to vanish almost overnight. In its place emerged a new, more fragmented urban reality, one shaped not by imperial decree, but by the pressing needs of survival in a fractured world. The straight, broad avenues of the Roman grid were slowly choked off. New structures were built haphazardly, their foundations overlapping the old roadways, forcing pathways to curve and narrow into a tangled web of alleys. This was not a designed labyrinth for defense, but an organic, almost accidental growth, a slow encroachment of private life upon public space. The central organizing principle of the city shifted decisively. No longer was it the civic forum, a space for public governance and commerce. Now the skyline was dominated by two new poles of power, the castle of the local lord and the spire of the cathedral. The castle, often a crude but formidable fortress of wood and stone, represented raw secular authority and protection, its presence a constant reminder of a volatile and dangerous age. The cathedral, rising slowly over generations, represented the enduring power of the church, a spiritual fortress offering a different kind of refuge. Life became intensely local, oriented around these twin pillars of the feudal and the divine. This was the great undoing of 1,000 years of urban planning tradition. The grand vision of harmoniously ordered space gave way to a more immediate, pragmatic, and inward-looking existence. The city contracted, both physically and in its aspirations, becoming a tightly packed warren where the daily struggle for security and sustenance eclipsed any dream of marble monuments or imperial glory. Yet within these dense medieval warrens, a new urban vision was taking shape under the desert sun. The Islamic city model offered a brilliant reinvention of public and private space, drawing its core principles from the original community in Medina. At its spiritual and social heart stood the Friday Mosque, a vast courtyard for communal prayer that could accommodate the entire male population of the city for the most important weekly sermon. Adjacent to this sacred center lay the main souk, a sprawling, vibrant marketplace organized by craft and trade. The air here was thick with the scent of spices, the sound of haggling merchants, and the sight of goods from across the known world. This deliberate placement fused daily commerce with weekly devotion, ensuring that the rhythms of faith and trade were inextricably linked. From this bustling public core, a labyrinth of narrow, often covered streets radiated outward, creating a shaded network that shielded pedestrians from the intense heat. These winding alleys were not a sign of chaos, but a carefully considered design for climate control and social privacy. They led away from the noise of the souk and into the quiet, residential quarters where a different world began. Here, the city turned inward. High, windowless walls faced the street, presenting a uniform and impenetrable facade to the outside world. The true life of the home unfolded behind these walls, within the private oasis of the courtyard. This central open space, often featuring a fountain and shaded by trees, was the family's outdoor living room, a place for cooling breezes, for children to play, and for domestic life to unfold in seclusion and peace. This architectural separation created a profound duality, a city of two faces. The public face was one of communal gathering in the mosque and souk, while the private face was one of family and introspection within the courtyard's walls. This model proved incredibly resilient and adaptable, scaling from the initial perfect circular plan of Baghdad, a city of concentric rings built as a capital of the empire, to the organic, sprawling genius of later cities like Cairo. It was an urbanism that masterfully balanced the demands of faith, commerce, and family, crafting a dense, socially cohesive fabric that was perfectly tuned to its cultural and environmental context. This sophisticated understanding of the city as a layered realm of public ritual and private refuge would leave a lasting mark, one that echoes in the winding alleys of old quarters even today. While the Islamic city turned inward to its private courtyards, another civilization was building cities that faced the cosmos with unwavering confidence. In ancient China, the capital city was not merely a place for people to live, it was a sacred diagram of the entire universe, designed to channel cosmic harmony directly to the emperor's throne. The ideal city was a perfect square or rectangle, its walls aligned precisely with the four cardinal directions, creating a symbolic boundary between the ordered world of civilization and the untamed chaos beyond. Through its 12 gates, 3 on each side, the rhythms of the year and the influence of the heavens were believed to flow into the urban body. At the dead center of this geometric perfection sat the Imperial Palace, enclosed within its own formidable walls. This was not just a strategic location, it was a profound philosophical statement. The emperor was the axis mundi, the still point around which the entire world turned, and his palace was the physical proof of his divine mandate to rule. Every street, every canal, every wall in the capital was part of a rigid grid that enforced this celestial order onto the earth. A magnificent central avenue, the Vermilion Bird Street in cities like Chang'an, ran on a perfect north-south axis, wide enough for grand imperial processions that displayed the ruler's power to his subjects. The population itself was sorted into this geometric matrix, living in walled residential wards that locked the social hierarchy into the very map of the city. Officials lived near the center, artisans and merchants in their designated blocks, and commoners in the outer wards, each area closed by gates at night. This was urban planning as a tool of social control and spiritual alignment, a physical manifestation of the Confucian ideal of a well-ordered society where everyone knew their place. The entire city functioned as a monumental engine designed to maintain balance between heaven, earth, and humanity. To walk its streets was to move through a living argument for imperial authority, an environment so meticulously planned that it convinced you of its own eternal rightness. How could such an unshakable vision of order, carved so perfectly into the landscape, ever be challenged or changed across the ocean? A parallel story of the city was being written in stone. In the highlands of Mexico, the great metropolis of Teotihuacan rose with a geometry so precise it seems to have been drawn by the gods themselves. Its centerpiece was the colossal Avenue of the Dead, a wide ceremonial causeway running for miles, flanked by platforms and temples that created a man-made canyon of breathtaking scale. At its northern end stood the Pyramid of the Moon, its form mirroring the shape of the sacred mountain behind it. Further along, the even larger Pyramid of the Sun anchored the city, its base a near-perfect square. The entire urban plan was a celestial map, its main structures aligned not just to the cardinal directions, but to the cyclical risings and settings of the sun, moon, and stars. This was not a city that grew by accident. It was a single, vast architectural composition, a planned environment where every building, from the grandest temple to the most modest residential compound, had its ordained place within the cosmic grid. The sheer scale of its monuments suggests a society capable of mobilizing thousands of workers, all dedicated to a shared spiritual vision made manifest in stone and plaster. How did such a complex urban order emerge without any known contact with the planners of Europe or Asia? The answer lies in a universal human drive, the desire to build a home for the gods on Earth. Centuries later, another island city would achieve a similar feat through sheer engineering will. The Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan was a Venice of the New World, a stunning urban jewel built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. To expand their limited land, the Aztecs created chinampas, fertile artificial islands for agriculture, weaving a grid of canals and productive fields right up to the city's edge. 3 great causeways connected the island to the mainland, bustling with traders and travelers. At the city's absolute center lay the sacred precinct, a vast walled plaza containing the twin temples of Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli, the major gods of rain and war. This ceremonial core was the axis mundi of the Aztec universe, the place where the human and divine realms intersected. The entire city, from its orderly canals to its towering pyramids, was a testament to a society that had mastered its challenging environment through brilliant hydraulic engineering and a unified religious purpose. The existence of Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan reveals a profound truth. The impulse to create ordered, monumental urban spaces, centered on the twin pillars of religion and power, was not a cultural invention that spread from a single source. It was a universal human phenomenon, a blueprint for civilization that emerged independently across the globe, proving that the city itself is one of humanity's most innate and powerful ideas. The castle and the cathedral no longer held a monopoly on the urban skyline. A new silhouette began to rise above the cramped streets of Europe, a tower built not for a king or a bishop, but for the people. This was the belfry, the defiant symbol of a revolutionary new urban form, the medieval commune. From the 11th century onward, in the wealthy trading regions of northern Italy and Flanders, cities began to wrestle their independence from feudal lords. For the first time in centuries, citizens were governing themselves, and this newfound civic pride demanded a new kind of architecture. They constructed massive new defensive walls, not just for protection, but to physically define the boundaries of their self-rule and encompass a booming urban population. Within these walls, a new trio of public buildings proclaimed the city's identity. The town hall stood as the seat of civic government, a place where merchants and guildsmen made the laws. The Cloth Hall, a vast covered market, celebrated the commercial wealth that made this independence possible. And the belfry, that soaring tower with its bells ringing out the hours, was the voice of the commune, calling citizens to assembly or warning of danger. It was a declaration that time itself now belonged to the city, not to a distant lord. While the tangled street network often remained, a legacy of the earlier medieval period, the commune carved out spectacular exceptions. They created vast central market squares like the magnificent shell-shaped Piazza del Campo in Siena. This was not an accidental leftover space. It was a deliberate and ambitious stage for public life. Its carefully sloped pavement funneled crowds toward the town hall, creating a natural amphitheater for civic events, markets, and the famous Palio horse race. This focus on planned, monumental public space for commerce and community was a radical departure. It signaled a shift in the very purpose of a city, from a place of feudal obligation to a center of collective identity and economic power. The Commune was the urban precursor to the Renaissance, the moment the city remembered its own potential and began to build for its own glory once more. The soaring belfry of the Commune had declared the city's independence, but it was the Renaissance that gave it a new soul. A powerful intellectual movement looked back across 1,000 years, past the medieval warrens, to rediscover the clarity of Rome and the philosophy of Greece. The city was no longer just a fortress or a market. It was now a work of art, and its canvas was the urban landscape itself. Visionaries like Leon Battista Alberti wrote treatises arguing that a city's beauty was not accidental, but a direct result of mathematical principles. He advocated for streets laid out with geometric precision, for buildings designed according to harmonious proportions that mirrored the human form and the cosmos. This was a return to the idea of sacred geometry, but with a crucial difference. The divine order was now to be experienced and appreciated by the human eye from a single, perfect viewpoint. The revolutionary tool of linear perspective, fresh from the studios of painters, was applied to the street. A long, straight avenue flanked by uniform buildings would draw the gaze toward a central monument, creating a staged, theatrical experience of urban space. This human-scale grandeur was a deliberate attempt to make the citizen feel both awe and belonging within a rationally ordered world. This new aesthetic, however, had to confront a brutal new reality of warfare. The old vertical walls were useless against cannonballs. The response was the star-shaped fortification, a radical new form that gave cities a distinctive radial silhouette. Low, thick, and angled bastions projected outwards, allowing defenders to fire along the faces of the walls and cover every inch of the approach. This military necessity created a sharp, geometric boundary, and within this star-shaped perimeter, the ideal of the circular piazza could flourish. While few cities were built entirely from scratch, these ideals were surgically inserted into the existing urban body. In Rome, the chaotic convergence of three major roads at the northern gate was transformed into the Piazza del Popolo. A pair of symmetrical churches framed the entrance, and three straight streets fanned out from an obelisk, imposing a breathtaking geometric order onto the medieval tangle. This was the Renaissance genius to carve perfect shapes into the living stone of the old city, proving that the ideal was not a distant dream, but a layer of beauty that could be applied to the world as it was. The geometric order of the Renaissance was only a prelude to a grander, more theatrical vision of the city. The Baroque era took that rational framework and twisted it into a tool of pure spectacle, a stage set designed to overwhelm the senses and glorify the absolute power of kings and popes. This was urban planning as propaganda on an epic scale, where the entire city became a testament to the unstoppable authority of a single ruler. The key instrument of this new vision was the Monumental Avenue. Think of Paris transformed, where the Champs-Élysées was carved through the landscape as a straight, tree-lined arrow pointing directly to the palace of the king. This was not a street for casual strolling. It was a processional route, a pathway for royal entries and military parades that demonstrated control over the very land itself. Architects like Gian Lorenzo Bernini and landscape master Andrea Lanotta became the choreographers of this new urban theater. They employed forced perspective, designing long vistas that made distances seem shorter and terminating buildings appear larger and more dominant than they truly were. The entire city was reimagined along powerful central axes, lines of sight that pulled the eye and the citizen toward a single, symbolic center of power, be it a throne or an altar. Nowhere is this theatrical genius more breathtaking than in Bernini's design for St. Peter's Square in Rome. The vast oval piazza, embraced by its colonnades, was described by the artist himself as the motherly arms of the church welcoming the faithful. But it was also a masterfully engineered space for mass spectacle, capable of holding thousands while framing an awe-inspiring view of the basilica. This was the ultimate subordination of the urban landscape, a deliberate manipulation of space and perception to inspire a very specific feeling, a mixture of reverence, pride, and utter submission to the magnificent order imposed from above. The theater of Baroque power was swept away by a new kind of force, one that ran on coal and steam. The Industrial Revolution triggered the most rapid and disruptive urban transformation in human history, shattering centuries of planning tradition in a single generation. Cities like Manchester and London ceased to grow, they simply exploded, their populations doubling and tripling as rural families abandoned the land for the promise of work in the new mills and factories. This was growth driven by profit, not principle, a chaotic and utterly unplanned expansion that created a new kind of urban environment, the industrial metropolis. Factories with their towering brick chimneys belching black smoke became the new citadels, and they were built first. Around them, in their literal shadow, rushed up the infamous slums. These were not neighborhoods, they were human warehouses. Developers built back-to-back houses, structures that shared walls on three sides, leaving no room for windows, for light, or for air. An entire family might be crammed into a single damp room, with a communal privy shared by dozens in a stinking courtyard. The ancient ideals of sacred geometry, public health, and civic beauty were abandoned completely in favor of pure utility and maximum density. The results were a crisis of a scale never before seen. The air itself grew thick and acrid with soot. Rivers, once life sources, became open sewers, carrying industrial waste and human filth through the heart of the city. Outbreaks of illness became a constant, grim feature of urban life, with the most vulnerable suffering the most. This was the stark human cost of unregulated industrial capitalism, a reality of smoke, grime, and profound hardship that stood in shocking contrast to the wealth being generated. For the first time, the city itself seemed to be making its inhabitants sick, creating a landscape of alienation and social unrest. Yet from this profound discontent, from the visceral understanding of what a city should not be, the first stirrings of a modern urban reform movement were born, a desperate search for a new blueprint for human dignity. The squalor of the industrial city could not be ignored forever. From the smoke and desperation, a new kind of visionary emerged, one who believed that the city's form could be a direct cure for its social ills. These were the first modern urban planners, and they offered radically different prescriptions for a healthier urban future. In England, Ebenezer Howard recoiled from the oppressive grime of London and imagined a perfect fusion, a garden city. His was not a mere suburb, but a self-contained community of limited size, ringed by a permanent agricultural greenbelt. At its center would be a crystal palace for shopping and leisure, surrounded by gracious public gardens, residential areas, and an outer ring of factories and farms. Howard's vision was a humane diagram for living, designed to give residents the cultural opportunities of the town alongside the health and beauty of the countryside. It was a powerful rebuke to the unending industrial sprawl, a call to build communities, not just profit from density. While Howard dreamed of starting over on fresh ground, Baron Haussmann was given absolute power to remake the ancient heart of Paris. His method was not gentle persuasion but wholesale surgery. He carved broad, straight boulevards directly through the city's densest medieval slums, using the logic of a surgeon's scalpel. These new avenues, lined with uniform, elegant stone buildings, were celebrated for improving air circulation and sunlight. They allowed for the efficient movement of troops to quell unrest, and perhaps most importantly, they created a modern network for water mains and new sewer systems that finally tackled the city's historic public health crises. Haussmann's Paris was a city reborn through demolition, a stunning imposition of imperial order that traded tangled alleyways for majestic vistas, forever changing the scale and experience of the European metropolis. Meanwhile, in Barcelona, a different kind of grid was taking shape. Ildefons Cerdà, surveying the cramped conditions of the old city, actually invented the term urbanism to describe his new science of city design. For the new Ixample district, he conceived a grid of square blocks with one brilliant innovation, the chamfered corner. By slicing off each corner of the block, he created octagonal intersections that allowed for vastly better light, ventilation, and visibility for the new technology of the day, the horse-drawn tram. His plan ensured that every building would have sunlight, and that these new open spaces would become natural hubs for social interaction. Cerdà's work was a masterpiece of forethought, an engineer's solution to the human need for light, air, and movement. Together, these pioneers signaled a monumental shift. After a century of chaotic growth, humanity was once again trying to take conscious control of its urban destiny, proving that the design of our cities is ultimately a reflection of our deepest values about how life should be lived. That rediscovery of ancient urban ideals began not in a library but in the ground. The 18th and 19th centuries witnessed the birth of archaeology as a science, a systematic quest to pull the past from the earth. From the volcanic ash of Pompeii to the layered mounds of Troy and the labyrinthine palace of Knossos, the sophisticated plans of lost cities were suddenly revealed in breathtaking detail. At Pompeii, the excavation was not just about finding artifacts, it was like peeling back a layer of time. The city's streets, shops, and homes were found exactly as they were on that day in August of the year 79. For the first time in over a millennium, modern planners could walk a complete Roman street, could stand in a forum, could see how light fell into an ordinary person's courtyard. This was not a ruin, it was a time capsule of urban life, a perfect, preserved laboratory of ancient city planning. The impact was immediate and profound. Architects and designers who had only read about classical principles in texts could now see them in 3 dimensions. The rediscovered Greek agora and the Roman forum were not just historical curiosities, they were proven models of successful public space. They offered a new vocabulary of colonnades, temples, and civic squares that spoke of order, community, and a lost grandeur. This direct encounter with the past actively reshaped modern ideas about what a city could and should be. The grand neoclassical buildings and the planned civic centers that began to appear in European and American cities were not just a style, they were part of a dialogue. It was a conversation across centuries where the rediscovered wisdom of the ancients provided a powerful argument against the chaos of the industrial age, suggesting that a better city was not just a future possibility, but a forgotten reality waiting to be remembered. This new science of planning soon collided with the raw power of the automobile, a force that would reshape the urban landscape more dramatically than any emperor's decree. The 20th century introduced 2 revolutionary ideas that fundamentally rewrote the rules of city building. The first was comprehensive zoning, a legal tool that surgically separated the functions of urban life. For thousands of years, cities had thrived on a rich mixture of uses where the shopkeeper lived above his store and the factory was a short walk from the worker's home. Zoning laws now mandated a strict segregation, creating vast, singular zones exclusively for homes, for commerce, or for industry. This was a profound departure, a move towards a kind of urban efficiency that prized order over the messy, vibrant complexity of traditional city life. The very experience of the city was fractured, turning a once integrated walk into a series of separate destinations. This new order was built for the second great force, the private car. The automobile demanded an entirely new infrastructure of wide, fast roads, massive parking lots, and sprawling highways. To accommodate this new network, engineers often cut these concrete ribbons directly through the heart of established urban neighborhoods, a process that displaced countless communities and severed the social and physical fabric of the city. The combined effect of zoning and the car was the explosive rise of the suburb, a new kind of low-density residential zone entirely dependent on automotive travel. This model offered private space and greenery, but it came at a cost: the slow decline of the dense, walkable city center that had been the heart of human civilization for millennia. This new vision found its architectural expression in the international style, a movement that championed glass and steel towers set within open plazas. These buildings promoted a universal, placeless aesthetic, a stark and repetitive geometry that often ignored local context, history, and the human scale of the street. This era represented a dramatic break from everything that had come before, a global experiment that prioritized the efficiency of movement and the separation of functions over the intangible values of community and a sense of place. The city was no longer a tapestry of interconnected lives, but a machine for living and commuting, its ancient rhythms replaced by the hum of the engine and the logic of the traffic flow. But the sleek, sterile geometry of the modern city soon revealed a profound emptiness. By the late 20th century, a powerful backlash was brewing against the towers and traffic lanes that had erased so much of the old urban fabric. At the heart of this critique was a simple, revolutionary idea that cities were for people, not just for plans. The most influential voice in this movement belonged not to an architect, but to a writer and activist named Jane Jacobs. She walked the streets of her own Greenwich Village neighborhood in New York and observed a vibrant, living ecosystem. She saw that safety did not come from police patrols, but from the natural surveillance of what she called eyes on the street, the casual watchfulness of shopkeepers, residents, and pedestrians going about their daily lives. She championed short blocks that created frequent corners and opportunities for interaction, and she celebrated the messy, vital mix of shops, homes, and small businesses that gave a neighborhood its character around the clock. Jacobs argued with fierce clarity that the modernist project, with its vast, empty plazas and its separation of functions, had destroyed the very social and economic conditions that made cities thrive. It had created sterile, inhuman environments that felt alienating and often dangerous. This was not just an aesthetic complaint, it was a deeply social and human one. Her work ignited a new way of thinking, one that emphasized context over universal solutions, historical preservation over wholesale clearance, and above all, designing at a human, pedestrian scale. Out of this philosophical shift grew tangible movements like New Urbanism, which explicitly sought to recapture the qualities of pre-industrial towns. These new developments, from seaside in Florida to Celebration, were designed with front porches to encourage neighborly contact, with alleys to hide utilitarian clutter, and with a central focus on public squares as the heart of community life. They were deliberate attempts to rebuild the intricate social fabric that had characterized ancient agoras and medieval market squares, understanding that the true strength of a city lies not in its grand monuments, but in the daily, unplanned encounters between its people. This was a full circle return, a rediscovery of the ancient truth that the most successful urban plans are those that feel organic, that prioritize connection over convenience, and that remember the human being walking through the space. This evolving conversation between the planned and the organic, between the grand vision and the lived experience, continues to shape our cities today, raising a crucial question for our own century. As we look toward an increasingly digital and automated future, what new layers will be woven into this ancient tapestry of urban life, and will they bring us closer together or push us further apart? The timeless wisdom of the past is now a blueprint for our future. We are beginning to understand that the most advanced urban solutions are often the most ancient ones, hidden in plain sight within the very cities we once labeled outdated. The dense, mixed-use fabric of a medieval town, where homes, workshops, and markets were woven together, created a walkable environment that drastically cut the need for transportation. This wasn't just quaint, it was inherently low carbon. The introverted courtyard houses found across the Islamic world were not merely private, they were masterpieces of passive climate control, their high walls and central open spaces creating cooling convection currents that offered refuge from the desert heat without a single watt of electricity. Even the placement of buildings, like the cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde or the solar-aligned streets of Mohenjo-Daro, demonstrates a deep understanding of passive solar principles, using the sun's arc for warmth in winter and shade in summer. This ancient intelligence is now being rediscovered and formalized by a new generation of planners and architects. We see it in the rise of green building standards that prioritize local materials and natural ventilation, in transit-oriented development that clusters housing and jobs around public transport hubs, and in water-sensitive urban design that manages stormwater through gardens and permeable surfaces, much like the ingenious cisterns and channels of the Romans and the Nabateans. The long journey from mud brick to marble is not just a story of increasing grandeur, but a profound lesson in durability and resource efficiency. Our ancestors, out of sheer necessity, built cities that were deeply integrated with their local environment. As we now face the global challenges of a changing climate and finite resources, their legacy offers a powerful and hopeful insight that the seeds of a sustainable urban future were planted in the very foundations of our first cities. We can now stand in the very center of an ancient forum and look up. Digital reconstructions are transforming dusty archaeological sites into living, breathing worlds, allowing us to experience the true genius of ancient urban planning firsthand. Using laser scanning that captures every contour of a fallen column and complex software that rebuilds crumbled walls, researchers are resurrecting entire cities. You can put on a virtual reality headset and walk through the bustling marketplace of Rome's Trajan's Forum, hearing the echoes of merchants and feeling the scale of the architecture around you. This is far more than a stunning visual tour. It is a revolutionary research tool. Scholars can now test long-held theories with digital precision. How would sunlight have illuminated the inner sanctum of an Egyptian temple on the summer solstice? Could a command shouted from the palace gate in Mycenae be heard clearly in the artisan quarters below? By simulating the movement of people and carts through the narrow streets of Mohenjo-Daro, we can understand the daily rhythms and potential bottlenecks of a 5,000-year-old city. This technology erases the damage of time, letting us see these spaces not as silent ruins, but as the vibrant, complex human environments they were designed to be. It bridges the immense gap between the broken stones we see today and the overwhelming grandeur these cities projected in their prime. This newfound ability to inhabit these ancient plans offers a deeper, more intuitive appreciation for the planners who, without computers, conceived of spaces that still feel awe-inspiring when digitally reborn. That ghost of the ancient city is not a phantom. It is the very skeleton beneath the skin of our modern world. Look at the rigid grid of Manhattan, a pattern of efficiency and real estate that can be traced in an unbroken line back to the Roman military camp, the castrum, and to the philosophical grids of Hippodamian. The blueprint for order, for the easy division and sale of land, was perfected millennia ago. Your own city's central park or main public square is a direct descendant of the Greek agora and the Roman forum, a space deliberately set aside not for a king, but for the people to gather, to protest, to celebrate, and simply to be together. This is not a coincidence, it is an inheritance. The very idea of separating a city into distinct zones for sacred, civic, and residential life is a principle as old as urbanization itself, a lesson in organization we learned in the first river valleys and have been refining ever since. Even our most contemporary urban struggles feel eerily familiar. The challenge of managing immense density, of providing clean water and removing waste for millions, of fostering a genuine sense of community in a crowd of strangers, these are not new problems. They are the same fundamental puzzles that the planners of Mohenjo-Daro, Rome, and Chang'an dedicated their lives to solving. The materials have evolved from sun-dried mud brick to tempered glass and steel, but the core questions remain unchanged. How do we live together? How do we share resources? How do we build a place that is not just a collection of buildings, but a home for the human spirit? This long evolution is more than history, it is our urban DNA. By understanding the decisions, the innovations, and even the mistakes etched into the stones of the past, we gain an invaluable toolkit for the future. We are not starting from scratch, we are continuing a conversation that began when the first walls were raised, a conversation about what a city can and should be for everyone who calls it home. This long journey from mud walls to marble teaches us that a city is far more than stone and street. It is the physical form of our deepest human needs, our spiritual longings, and our constant struggle to balance individual freedom with collective order. Every grid plan and every winding alley is a choice, a reflection of what a society values most, whether that is defense, divine harmony, democratic debate, or imperial control. The story of urban planning is the story of us, written not on paper but on the land itself. The innovations of Çatalhöyük, the sanitation of Mohenjo-Daro, the engineering of Rome, and the celestial alignment of Tenochtitlan are not artifacts locked away in a museum. They are living conversations offering timeless insights into how we can build places that are not just efficient, but equitable, not just durable, but truly alive. As we design the cities of the future, facing challenges of climate and connection our ancestors could never have imagined, we do not start from zero. We stand on a foundation laid over thousands of years, rich with wisdom about community, beauty, and our place in the world. The next chapter of this story is ours to write. If this journey through the hidden language of cities has sparked your curiosity, please subscribe for more explorations into the mysteries of our past. And we would love to hear from you. Which ancient city from our story would you most want to walk through, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below.